I'm a famous Adelaide lesbian. Have been for many years. I like being a famous Adelaide lesbian. I've done all sorts of things that make me famous, and tonight I'm going to share some of those stories with you. Okay, so Mark Jude unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, so I might try and fill in a little bit of what Mark might have said, but I could never try and replace Mark Jude, that's for sure. So where I'm going to start is, I was going to start somewhere else because I did make some dot points, but I'm going to start because I did look at that little list over there before of all the different sort of gay venues, etc., that have been named. And what I was very heartened to see was the South Australian Hotel. Now, my mother and father both worked at the South Australian Hotel, and that's where they met and fell in love and then ended up getting married. She was an upstairs maid, he was a drink waiter. And yes, I was blessed as a child to be brought up around lots of gays and lesbians because my father worked at the South Australian Hotel. And the South Australian Hotel was a place where gay men used to come and meet and have drinks and dalliance, etc. So I hadn't thought of going that far back, but yes, so from that high I can tell you stories from the South Australian Hotel. But we won't go into that. So I'm starting with the 1975. So I'm going to give you a bit of a little 1975 through to the 90s. So I came out as a lesbian when I turned 19. I'm now 60 going on 61. I'm a heterosexual virgin. I'm very proud of that. I am a true lesbian with a capital L. No man has ever got near this body. The closest has been Brian North. That's always platonic, which is very nice. And I had the luxury, and I say it was the luxury of coming out and coming into a social world which was a lesbian feminist world. So I had the luxury of coming out and wearing overalls and army shirts and boots and badges and being political and polygamy and challenging all the male capitalistic patriarchal definitions of relationships and all that sort of social stuff. So that's where I got to come into the world as a lesbian. And in those days, the place we met was at the Women's Liberation Centre, which was in Bloor Court, which was just off Curry Street down that other end. And every Monday night there used to be a Women's Liberation meeting. And then regularly there used to be these women's dances. So we're talking of an era where men and women did a lot of things separately. Yes, there was a Thursday night pub at the Royal Hotel where lots of universities and academic gays and lesbians got together and active political feminists, etc. But mostly we did things as women. And the men preferred to do things as men in their gay men's only sort of spaces. So when you look at some of those things on that list, a lot of them were places where the fellas went to, and a lot of them were places where just women went to separately. And we liked it that way. I still like it that way, but we just don't do it that much anymore. When I had my 40th birthday, I I thought, no, bugger it, I'm going to have an all-women's birthday party. Well, my brother-in-law and nephews and dad and everybody were really pissed off, but that's how we used to do it in the 70s, and that's what I wanted to do then. Pre-lesbian feminism, there's what we refer to much more as the camp scene. And this is potentially where Mark Jude would have been in the camp scene. A lot of stuff where, as a lesbian woman, someone dressed butch, someone dressed femme. You very much had your Polaco shirts, your ties, your Round Merton shoes, and your vest on. A lot of women had butch names, you know, like Rusty, George, Frankie, and all that mob. And then the girls, a lot of the femme lesbians all had sort of very female girly names, lots of lipstick, lots of dresses and those sorts of things. And in my day, where they were meeting was the Buckingham Arms Hotel, which isn't on that list, but some of you would remember the Buckingham Arms or have heard of the Buckingham Arms, which is still there as a hotel. And that used to be a great gay pub. And I'll never ever forget the first time I went there as a lesbian feminist, and don't forget, you know, we were all being polygamous and raising the women's movement flag, etc. And I walked into that bar, and I'd never seen butch and femme lesbians like that, because I was in my army shirt and overalls and boots and badges. And I walked in, and my jaw just dropped. It was fantastic. I was 19, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. Anyhow, I started staring a little bit too long at a couple of femmes. Next minute, these big butchers came over, and they were about to get me. Fortunately, I knew Rusty, and Rusty came up, no mate, she's all right, she's just new. She's just new. So Rusty saved my life in those days. But it was a very different scene, the camp scene. It had codes, it had ethics, it was very underground at times because it wasn't safe to be out. If you ever want to read a really good book, it was Stone Butch Blues. It shares a wonderful story, and many of you would have read it, of how it was being a butch lesbian, living in those sort of times. There was also another pub, the Elephant and Castle, which was where a lot of camp lesbians went, and that was a real scene. Once again, very working class, very tough, very scary. Don't look that Sheila in the face or else, and you know, it was really, I loved it. It was really, because it was all just sort of new and wild, and because I sort of had that naivety, it was like, oh hi, I'm a lesbian, yeah, yes, I say the word, I'm a lesbian, you know, because even then, back those days, that particular pre-feminist movement wasn't necessarily using the word lesbian with confidence. So we had women's bars, we had men's bars, and we had mixed bars. Women's dances were big for us in the 70s, outside of bars. So at Bloor Court, we used to have women's only dances, always with a women's band. I was in a band called Jizwana, like Jizwana Dance, you know, and we used to play. There were bands like Foreign Body, what was the other one Mystery had? That's who? The Red Meds, Sticky Beak, that's the one I'm thinking of. So we had lots of live music at our events. It was pre-DJ sort of stuff. You didn't necessarily, you either had a live band or you had a pre-mixed tape that you made and you put it on and pressed the cassette player and it played and you danced and danced and danced.